Hello everyone, PenguinSal here. Time for another indie game review video. This time it's for one that was quite popular when it launched. We've only finally gotten around to playing it because it was just on sale, so we picked it up. It is called Cult of the Lamb. Like I said, this was incredibly successful when it came out. It was one of the big things in indie games when it came out. It is published by Devolver, who had a pretty good track record of identifying these games and pushing them to market, and Cult of the Lamb was no different. So I was always a little bit skeptical because a lot of times when these games come out and they are so successful, it always makes me wonder, what did this do differently? What did this do so interesting and effectively that it pushed so many people to play it when there's so many different games to play? Well, Cult of the Lamb did end up being pretty unique in my opinion. So essentially, you're a little lamb and you make a deal with like a devil or a god, depending on how you look at it. And he essentially gives you unending life so that you can start a cult in his honor as you try to free him. So the game really plays out in two fashions. There's the adventuring part of the game where you essentially go through little mini dungeons where, you fight enemies, you find different weapons and things. It's very roguelike in this sense. You find these tarot cards to give you powers. You find these relics to give you powers, and you do pick your path. There are shops. There's ways to get more followers. There's additional fights. So that's pretty standard, but I actually think the combat's pretty fun. Like I said, any of these like isometric, like top-down type combat games always should have a dodge roll. Every game should have a dodge roll if there's combat, 2D, 3D, these isometrics. This one has a great dodge roll system, so that automatically makes me like the gameplay for the combat a lot better. There's also a lot of different weapons you can use that have different damages and different attack speeds. There's different curses you can use, which are secondary abilities that you can recharge by killing enemies. There's also these different items you can get that essentially they do like damage to everybody or freeze time or hit everybody with poison, and they recharge over time as you hit enemies. There's a lot of fun to the combat, honestly. I think the bosses play out to be pretty fun and different. There's all sorts of little guys that have different projectile abilities or attack speeds or different things you have to be wary of while you're playing. Traps out on the maps and things like that. There's a lot to like about just the combat part of this game, with the fact that it is a roguelike. There's a lot of different weapons and things that you can get. There's different perks that you can upgrade outside of the adventure to make it so you can start seeing better items, or there are more varieties of items you can collect. So there is a lot of passive things that you can upgrade through playing the game that'll make the rogue-like part of the game have more variety when you go through and do these different runs in these dungeons. And then, honestly, the part of the game I liked even more was the other half of the game where you're building up the cult. Essentially, you have to recruit followers, and they're all these adorable little hand-drawn looking animals and little creatures, so they're automatically charming to look at. And you essentially recruit these followers, and you have to build their loyalty, and you have to get them to worship you and like pray to your shrine, and then you use their devotion, it's called, to unlock different things for like your shrine and your altar. And you can hold sermons to like build the faith. You can do these rituals, and there's all sorts of different rituals, and I won't go into all of them, but that essentially can build faith or potentially lose faith and give you other positive benefits. And the whole time you're doing this, you have to make sure that all of the followers, even when you get new ones, they all have places to sleep. You have to make sure that they're all well fed. You have to make sure that the room around is clean and tidy, or they can get sick and get diseases, and that can make them less effective and potentially perish. And the whole time you're doing this, you get upgraded and different like furniture that can go in, I'll call it, and you have to worry about farming to make sure that everyone has food. But there's also a fishing mini game, and there's also like a little dice playing mini game, and there's just a lot to be done and a lot of fun to be had with this. Like I said, I understand why this one became so popular. I think the combat system is great, and the adventuring is great, and the roguelike aspects of it are fantastic, and I think that's the worst part of the game, is that, the better half is, in my opinion, the creating the cult. You get to name them after different people, and you get to watch them grow and develop, and they'll start giving you little quests that you can do, which will help them become more loyal to you if you can complete them. And the whole time you're making sure that everybody is in good standings and everybody's been worshiping you, and that you can keep that meter high, because when certain things happen, there starts to be some disarray, and then people start doubting you. And there's a bunch of negative things that can happen in that sense. Like I said, I think this is a fantastic game. I get why it had so much acclaim when it came out. I think Devolver found another great one to publish in Cult of the Lamb. This is one I hope to definitely come back to and go further with, and just see all the different passive upgrades you can get and things to make the runs feel different. And I mean, I call it run-based because you go into the dungeon, but death isn't the end. You can go again. So the whole time your citizens are chopping down trees and mining resources and just staying alive while you go back into the dungeon time and time again. And every time you go into the dungeon, that's a different run. So the runs are actually happening while your town is flourishing on the outside, or potentially not flourishing. It's all happening in real time while you are doing your runs in the dungeon. So the two really go hand in hand, and you have to monitor both of them. Because if you spend too much time out with your followers and you're not going into the dungeons, you will start running out of resources and money, and eventually you'll have to go in and get more followers and get more resources and progress in the story. But if you're doing too much of going into there and doing the combat and doing the adventuring, then your people will start starving, and they'll start not worshiping you, and they'll think that you're a bad leader, and they might dissent, and they might start getting sick. And you have to make sure that you're spending time effectively on both parts of the game. Like I said, I hope to see more of these types of games where they have half combat, half something else to do. I said Moonlighter's always been a big one, in my opinion, that does that well. Dave the Diver I really liked, the dichotomy of the things you can do in that game, which we'll play on here at some point and review. But I hope to see more of these games that do a bit of both. I think there's so much room for this to be a more expanded genre, because I think they're some of the most fun games out there that give you a bit of both and a lot of different things to focus on, and have passively have upgrades to things, and just continue to just progress in the game. So this was Cult of the Lamb. If you haven't checked this out, there's a good chance you have. If you haven't, there is a link for it in the description if you want to wishlist it or potentially try it out for yourself. Like I said, there's a good chance you have, because this was really popular when it came out. If you liked the video, feel free to give it a like. If you like seeing these indie game reviews and going a little bit more in depth into my thoughts on some of these games after we play them on the stream. If you haven't subscribed yet and you'd like to, it really would go a long way to helping us out. We're trying to get that sub count up so we can get further and further into our growth on YouTube and potentially become a YouTube partner at some point in the hopefully not so distant future. So if you haven't subscribed, it really would help out a lot. It is free to do. So, if you like me and you like what you see, feel free to do it. We'll be back with more of these indie game review videos. The following day we'll come out with them every day. Feel free to give me a comment on if you tried out Cult of the Lamb, and what your favorite part was, the combat and roguelike adventure, or building up your cult. Well, until next time, I'm PenguinSal, and I will see you guys in the next video.